My name is Alyssa Grube, and I am a PhD student in the Department of Environmental Sciences and Engineering in the Gilling School of Public Health. So the challenge my research hopes to solve is this big question of antibiotic resistance, which is often talked about as one of the biggest challenges for public health facing our generation. And why antibiotics matter is because we use them for a range of things in modern medicine, everything from ear infections to post-operative procedures to C-sections, and they're really integral to the way our medical system currently operates. And when those antibiotics stop working, we run into some really big problems. So we often think about antibiotic resistance in the clinical sense and within a human host. So you take an antibiotic, and in the course of that therapy, some bacteria might mutate and become resistant, or they might be resistant to begin with. But the end point is that you have more bacteria that are resistant to the antibiotic than you started with. But the reality is, bacteria have been producing antibiotics for millions and billions of years out there in the environment. And they do this to compete with their neighbors and to outcompete their neighbors as they are all fighting over very limited resources. So the reality is we can go out into environments and actually observe antibiotic-resistant bacteria in the absence of any apparent clinical selective pressure. So this brings us question about what's the role of the environment as a source of antibiotic-resistant bacteria, as a reservoir, and then also in the transmission of these bugs. So there's this big question of, can you go out into the environment and pick up an antibiotic-resistant bacteria, and then down the road, an antibiotic doesn't work for you. You've never taken it, but just something that you've picked up has been resistant. So there's some big questions we can answer there about what is this role of the environment. So the Galapagos is a really unique place to ask questions about antibiotic resistance because we have a really cool model system where you see areas of really intense human impacts, such as wastewater discharge sites, and then across the scale of kilometers, there are beaches where tourists can't even visit. So we can go out and ask how antibiotic resistance varies across these conditions and make some guesses about what's there as background, and then what might be there in the environment because of some kind of human impacts or some kind of pollution. And so this contrast over such a small geographical scale would be difficult to replicate anywhere else in the world. So the global impact is, like I said, antibiotic resistance is a huge public health challenge, and we still don't know this missing piece about the role in the environment as a source of antibiotic-resistant bacteria or in the transmission of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So while doing this work can tell us some really cool things about what's going on specific to the Galapagos, we can also apply these to larger questions about background environmental resistance, the introduction of antibiotic-resistant bacteria into the environment, and what this means for human health. So does this mean you can go out into the environment and pick up an antibiotic-resistant bug from some kind of a reservoir completely outside of the clinic? The Galapagos Science Center has been instrumental in every aspect of my research, from getting down to the Galapagos to getting out in the field. As you can imagine, it's logistically difficult to do work in the Galapagos. There are a lot of permits and permissions that you need, and the GSC staff and personnel have been so amazing in helping me navigate the process to be able to go out and collect samples and process them and take them back to the United States. The microbiology lab in particular has everything I need to process my samples and extract DNA out of them in the exact same way that I would back at my lab here in North Carolina. So that's been awesome to not worry about any procedural differences between doing my work there and doing it back here in the United States. And then finally, I've just made some really great friendships, and the camaraderie and even the emotional support of doing work in a place that's so remote.